Let's go to special teams. Special teams is a fascinating thing in this game because ordinarily this is a phase of the game that Iowa blows teams out in terms of field position, the hidden yardage, stuff like that. And I have no reason to believe Iowa is not yet again one of the better special teams in the country. However, up to this point, Iowa State has also been very good on special teams, specifically in the kicking and return games. We'll start with the kicker in Kyle Conrarty, who outside of a long field goal against Kansas State at the beginning of the game in the rain, which was never going to go in. That's not his fault. That attempt should have never happened. He is otherwise perfect, and on Saturday hit the school record 63-yard field goal. I know last week Drew Stevens for Iowa also hit his career long of 55. So both kickers have a good leg. Kyle Conrarty's is bigger. But field goal kicking is elite. Both teams have elite returners. Aiden Flora, assuming he's healthy, had a huge week last week. Averaged 57.5 yards per punt return. He brought the first one back for a touchdown, but it was ruled it was brought back about 20 yards for stepping 1 inch out of bounds, basically. And he's been effective on kick returns. Had a really nice kick return later in the game against Kansas State. Yeah, they've got their guy back there. He's really effective. I expect, as long as he's healthy, I expect that to be a productive spot for Iowa State. Iowa has Caden Weegen. Good returner. Had a big kick return at the very, very end of last year's Cyhawk game. He's a good returner. Iowa State absolutely needs to, in the punting game especially, Iowa State really needs to make sure that your gunners are downfield accounting for him. I think if it makes sense, just kick it out of bounds. There's no real reason to give him the ball, especially given the lack of explosion on Iowa's offense. Giving them an extra 10 yards on offense versus putting the hands in of Caden Weegen, I think is a no-brainer. If you're either letting Weegen field the ball at the 15 or the 20 yard line, or you can kick it out of bounds at the 30 and make the offense take over at the 30. I think you take that option, 9 times out of 10. There's not a lot of upside to actually letting, Weegen field any punts, basically, or at least field any of them clean. So, Tyler Perkins, this is up to you. Obviously it's punter Tyler Perkins. This is him. This is his responsibility to know how dangerous that returner is, the situations that it's okay to kick it to him, like especially if you're maybe in short yardage, if you're like on the 50-yard line or something like that, and you don't really have any, there's no chance for you to outkick your coverage. In that situation, you're putting it out of bounds, or you're not worried about it. In that situation, kicking out of the back of the end zone isn't the worst thing ever. Making Iowa's offense drive 80 yards is a perfectly acceptable outcome at the end of a punt. If you have to choose between that and letting Weegen field a punt, just take the touchback. It's fine. There's no downside to that. So, special teams is a big one. If either team is able to get a big return, flip the field, God forbid, return one for a touchdown. If either team is able to do that, that could be a massive, massive tipping point for this game. Because the special teams or a turnover score in this game typically damn near, it's one of the last nails in the coffin typically for the other team, just because the scoring tends to be very, very tight. So we'll see how that shakes out. Turnovers and penalties. The penalty thing is neither team is a particularly penalty heavy team. Iowa State's only committed 3 through the first 2 weeks. I don't think Iowa committed very many, or if at all, or like one or two against Albany. They're typically not a heavily penalized team. I would not expect a lot of penalties in this game. Maybe a couple, but not very many. Turnovers. Iowa's defense basically lives on turnovers. The defense is set up to give you a little bit here and there, just give you a little bit, little bit, and then just wait. They're waiting. They're begging of you to get impatient, to force a ball someplace, to get overly aggressive, to get too cute, and then they strike and they intercept a pass. They force a fumble. They stop you behind the line for a 4-yard loss, whatever. That's when Iowa's defense strikes. They pounce as soon as you make a little mistake. So you need if I was State can get 19 of 20 Rocco on Saturday, it's going to be a long day. It's going to be a real long day for Iowa. But that is going to be the key there. If Iowa State can take care of the ball and not give Iowa any short fields or any extra possessions, or if you turn it over, on the 10-yard line. A red zone turnover against Iowa isn't necessarily catastrophic. It's not really much different than punting it, basically. You'd like to get the points, obviously, but there are more fearful, more prolific offenses that you would regret a lot more leaving in that spot. The turnover battle will go a long ways here. If Iowa does turn it over, that's major problems for them because, like I said, I don't think that team is remotely equipped to play from behind. If they have to come back from 2 scores down, you do not love Iowa State. You do not love Iowa's chances. They just don't have the firepower to go on quick drives or anything like that. They just don't. So it's tricky.